Hi, this is Roman, and today we're going to be talking about Unit 8 on conditional probability. Day 10, combining events, Part 2. How can we use Venn diagrams to represent sample spaces and to calculate probabilities as our focus question? So I'm going to be focusing on slide 12 and discuss this noticing and wondering activity and methods to encourage peer-to-peer discourse. So if we take a look at this noticing and wondering activity, we have our Venn diagram. We have a nice image here for students to grasp and possibly add noticings and wonderings. And our instructions here say to take a moment to examine the information in the Venn diagram and then use the blue box to record what you notice and what you wonder. It's a very open activity, which is one of the best types of activities to encourage discussion. So today what I'm going to share is a few ideas using accountable talk stems to encourage or mediate some peer-to-peer discourse given this remote setting that we're working in and possibly not having that much verbal discourse. So this would be a little bit different than having those conversations in the chat. So really pushing for students to unmute their mic and say and use these accountable talk stems. And of course, if that is not possible, finding a way to integrate student voice, having that these responses using accountable talk stems are appearing in the chat, possibly by having a peer read them or a few peers. So if we had this noticing and wondering activity, right, we obviously have the basic stems of I notice or I wonder, but we could also have the stating a new opinion as I think or believe, or in my opinion, or from my perspective, or based on it seems that. Of course, after reading, I conclude that, possibly in the diagram there. So having this little image there might be helpful for students when framing their statement, right? And that opens up maybe a host of new ideas that a student might not have, just having that talk stem there. It's also nice that now you could frame a response by asking another peer to agree, disagree, or add on, right? And here are a few of them that I like. I agree with you because that answer makes sense because I respectfully disagree with you because I have a different point of view. We're noticing that students are given an option to agree or disagree, or even the last one to piggyback on what you said or what blank said, right? We're giving students opportunities here to engage in discourse when possibly their first reaction might be that they might not have anything to add. And it's infectious as soon as we get a few student voices and we can just really build on it and we can have some discourse going on in our virtual classrooms using our platforms like Zoom, like Google Meet, and having these students hear each other more inside our classrooms. Another set of stems that I feel is vital for peer-to-peer discourse is asking for clarification, right? And this is an amazing one because it really empowers students, right? If we give them the opportunity to ask, what do you mean by, or why do you think that? Will you explain that again? I have a question about, I don't quite understand. Can you explain it a little bit more? That really hits home, that comfortable environment. And once we get a few students asking for clarification using these stems, that could really build on the discourse and the trust inside of our virtual classroom, because your first few students might just be following instructions. But after that, it allows students who might not be comfortable with the content to unmute their mic and hopefully share a misconception they're having. And that's valuable for them as a student, and it's even more valuable for us as teachers to reflect on what's going on in that room and be reflective of what worked and what didn't work in our lessons. The last set is paraphrasing or restating your opinion. So I like this one because, again, it opens up a few different opportunities for discourse, right? We do have a lot of times in our classes for this first one, or even the second one. So what you are saying is that, or in other words, you think, we have statements and opinions in math that sometimes can be misunderstood by students because of the language used or just the phrasing. So paraphrasing can be extremely valuable in our math classes because they might lead to misconceptions, right? If a student is using this stem and is stating a misconception, it's a great opportunity to address it. Or if they're putting it in another way, it might add to student understanding in your classroom, because whatever they might be saying will definitely click to a majority of your class. The best voice is a peer's voice, in my opinion. So those are those stems, respectively. Let's talk about some strategies to use when implementing. So screen sharing and asking students to frame their responses using an accountable talk stem. For screen sharing, no matter what platform we're using, if we're using Desmos, if we're using Jamboard, right, sharing the screen to give students an idea of what we're speaking about is vital. Also, for some of the platforms like Nearpod or like Desmos, where all student responses are seen, right, it's nice to have all of them on that same screen because they could be in different places. They could have some internet issues, and when you're sharing, you eliminate that when you say all of them have to be on that same page on your Google Meet or your Zoom screen where you're sharing. You can also have them share. One of the things that is being pushed in Google breakout rooms or in Zoom breakout rooms is screen sharing among students. So having that image that all of them are referring to, or having that graphic that all of them are referring to, is very valuable when using the accountable talk stems. In our lesson plans, plan to facilitate the peer-to-peer discourse, asking students to react to each other using the stems, right? Have a place for it. Don't make it forced. Make it be an organic part of your discussion and in your lesson. For our math activities, I do want to point out we have instructional routines with different accountable talk stems that align with certain lesson objectives. So we have the connecting representation routine and 3 reads, and there are many more on fostering math practices. New Visions has them, but the New Visions activities really just reference fostering math practices, and that's where all of them come from. And if you just look on the bottom of New Visions, it'll have the link for where they're adapting these routines from. And then the last part is just types of activities. Like we mentioned from our original slide, the noticing and wondering activity is an open-ended activity with several viewpoints, and it ensures multiple entry points for students to enter the discourse. And we had text that students could reference, but that's another idea. But open activities really lend themselves very well to having this type of discourse using accountable talk stems. So I hope this was vital and interesting on how to create some discourse in the classroom. Thank you.